we have here DP. He is a top coaching and consultant and vice president of sales at Proctor Gallagher Institute. And before we dive into this conversation, because we have a lot of questions from our followers for you, we would love you to tell our listeners that don't know you yet a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more about your personal and professional background. You can share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. First of all, thanks for having me. And I know we've communicated a lot on Instagram and gone back and forth over the last few months, and I'm glad we made this happen today. I've been looking forward to it. So, yeah, I'm 40 now, but I met Bob when I was 19. And even before that, my parents were heavily into personal development. So I had a healthy love for it, even in high school. I remember when my friends were studying, biology and math, and none of that stuff resonated with me. I was studying Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and, How to Win Friends and Influence People and those type of books. And the day that really changed things for me was when I was 19, my mother took me to a Science of Getting Rich seminar. And that's the book that inspired the movie The Secret, if you've seen that. And, Bob was the star of that movie. And I had never heard anybody talk like this guy before. He was saying things that I'd never heard come out of another human being's mouth. And I just thought, this guy is from another planet. And I was just mesmerized with what he was saying. And, one of the things he said, and I always joke about it, he said, having a job is the worst way to earn income because you trade your time for money and then you run out of time. And I think part of that is true. Maybe not all of it, but part of it was. And it was just an idea that I accepted and adopted that day. And I remember telling my mother I was never going to have a job. And she was terrified. She thought she made a huge mistake taking me to that seminar. Thought I'd live with her till I was 40. And I've never had a job since. I've always bet on myself. I've had, good years and bad years like we all do, but I've always bet on myself. And that was the day that I decided I was going to bet on myself. And I ended up letting a few years go by, and I studied the material. I loved Bob Proctor. I loved Jim Rohn. I loved all these guys that they said some just beautiful things were coming out of their mouths. And I just loved studying and how they interacted and they spoke and communicated. But nothing changed, and I couldn't figure out why nothing was changing. My first son was on the way. I have 3 kids now. I'm a full-time single dad, and I was in panic mode a little bit. I was making about $20,000 a year, and I ended up having a chance meeting with Bob, if you call it that. I don't really think anything happens by chance, at an airport. And Bob, he was the most generous human being I've ever met in my entire life. He spent a good hour with a young man in his early 20s who was lost. And he was saying a lot of stuff I had heard before because I've been studying the books and, reading, watching the videos. And so I was nodding my head saying, yes, I know this. Yeah, I know that. And eventually he says he didn't get annoyed, but I know I could see it in his eyes. He was annoyed. And he ends up grabbing my arm. And I think he did this. He was doing some NLP on me. He grabbed my arm really tightly to jolt my system. He wanted to create an emotional impact in that moment so I would move into action. And he said, look, kid, you know this, but you do not understand it. Otherwise, your results would be different. And the line that really sold me into getting into his mentorship was, he said, what you don't fix, your son is going to inherit. And he meant my mindset. And that was like, okay, I'm in, take my money. I'm all in. And so I got into his year-long coaching in my early 20s. And that year really changed a lot for me because I went from gathering the information like we all do to really studying myself on a very in-depth level and getting into the spirit of his awareness versus studying things from my awareness. And as I did that, it expanded my conscious awareness. And as you ladies know, once you expand your awareness, you can't unexpand it. You can't become unaware of what you're aware of. So that was a great year that changed my life. And then into my mid to late 20s became his protege and his understudy and traveled North America with him, studying with him, teaching with him, just getting into his conscious awareness. He was the most aware person I've ever been around. And, to be able to go to his home and stay there and study with him. And it was just a great few years with him as a young man, learning to become a man of value and really learning how to leave everybody better off than I found them like he did. Was just a game changer for me in my 20s. And then I went on to do some other entrepreneurial ventures for the next 10 years or so. And about 5 years ago this month, actually, I came back here to work with him and another gentleman named Arash, who was a close friend of mine and a mentor of mine as well. And the last 5 years have been incredible. It was a great run. Bob was a very, very close dear friend of mine. And we had a lot of fun together. And now here we are, taking the torch and carrying it with us and preaching the gospel as we go.
That's amazing. I feel like you're very blessed to have this opportunity, right? Because Bob is he was such an inspiration and light to this world. Like, I think like his teachings will resonate like for eternity, right? Because he's yeah, such a blessing. What would you say was the biggest lesson that you learned from Bob, and that was like a big shift for you that you're gonna carry for the rest of your life?
That's an open-ended question, man. There's so many lessons that he taught me. Now, there's a couple. I mean, like I mentioned them a little bit, but I'll go a little bit deeper on it. You know, like I think anybody in their 20s is trying to figure out who they are. You know, and I think I was probably doing a lot of things that my friends were doing. We were probably buying things to impress people who didn't care about us at all, and spending money we didn't have, and trying to look the part. In our early 20s, and when I started to work with him, he really taught me what it meant to be a man of value, like really bring value and impact to the marketplace. And he embedded in my mind that all I had to do was focus on getting better every single day and focus on enriching other people's lives. If I could enrich enough people's lives, my life would be enriched in the process. And, I never forgot that. And anytime I would spend time with him, I'd fly out to Toronto, I'd stay at his place, I'd watch him interact with other human beings. And he'd always operate from like the spiritual plane. I don't think he ever lived on the physical plane, really. And in that spiritual plane that he lived in, it was always just giving of himself, giving of his time, giving of his money, giving of his effort. And he would call it the impression of increase, like leaving people better off than you found them. And he would always find somebody every day to give something to that they could do nothing in return for him. He would just give. And I think those are the two biggest things I learned in my 20s working so closely with him, which was become a man of value, like really create impact and value in the marketplace, enrich other people's lives, and always, no matter what, leave people better off than you found them.
That's amazing.
Good. Yeah.
And I think Bob did such a great job. That's why his institute just grew so much. And he worked too. He was like 80. How old was Bob?
He was 87, going on 88.
Yeah. And he had an energy of like sometimes better energy than a lot of people in their 20s.
And the memory.
What is the future for the Proctor Gallagher Institute? Like going forward, like how would you say that? Did he leave any like kind of like direction that he wanted for the institute to go? And
yeah, absolutely he did. I think he left us sooner than he probably wanted to, although he, like I said before, he always operated from the spiritual plane. So I think the idea of death and transition, it probably excited him a little bit. Like just what's next, like just knowing him, he never said that out loud to me, but I know he's mentioned that to other people. It almost scared him how excited he was for the next phase, the next transition, because death and birth are all the same thing, right? And I think you guys can agree with that as well. But he didn't really care about legacy. Like he never talked a lot about legacy. He would always say, I have license to brag about all this because none of it's mine. The material was here before us. The material will be here now, and it'll be here after all of us. I think he wanted this to continue, the material to continue, the energy, the message to continue, whoever that needs to continue through, whether it's Sandy, myself, some of my other top coaches within the team. And, we had some people move on to other things. We had some people stay with us, and it's all moving into the right form, in my opinion. Since he's passed, I could tell you some wild stories, off camera, just through dreams and things I've had. Like he's working to and through me and others on a level that I don't quite understand, and yeah. And it's really interesting. Like I can just feel it certain days. I just know it certain days, like, that, and you can feel that in your soul. And so he didn't talk about legacy, but he always wanted this material and the idea of, knowing that everything starts within, and we can change what's going on within us if we get into the right environment, if we get the right, as Hill talks about in Think and Grow, it's specialized knowledge, intelligently directed, and we get access and proximity to people who have a certain level of awareness and understanding. I said that at the beginning of the call, like I got into his spirit, the spirit of his, he calls it your paradigm, you can call it your awareness, your understanding, whatever. But I got in the spirit of this man's mindset, and that's what changed my life. And that's what's changed so many other people's lives. So I think, his legacy and what he wants moving forward is just the message to continue, and us to continue to enrich people's lives the way he did, and never stop doing that. Always be leaving people better off, and making sure that they never stop. They always focus on one of the best words, and the words that he loved, which was getting better. He loved the word better. You can always do better. You hit a certain goal, Bob will call you up, congratulate you, and within 5 seconds, he'll say, what's your next goal? Let's continue to grow. There's no finish line. And I think that's his message, is just to continue to grow, continue to get this material and the message out there and help other people and affect their lives. And it's just a beautiful thing. Like when The Secret came out, it was like this collective consciousness that all across the world, people's minds started to open up. And then once they went deeper and understood how to actually implement it, not just, watch a video or a movie about it, that's when things begin to change. And that's our job, to open people's minds and show them how to not just consciously think about it, but really how to burn it into their subconscious and create the results and the life that they desire.
Oh,
So
thank you.
That's
Thank
beautiful.
you for sharing.
Yeah. And I think
We have one question for DP over here. Once our follower ask you, has been the biggest challenge you have faced in your life, and how you did overcome it?
Oh my goodness. I've had so many. I'm sure you two have as well.
Yes.
It's funny. Our biggest adversities end up being our biggest gifts, and I think back about 5 years ago, I went through a breakup. I went through a divorce, and I have 3 kids. And that was, in the moment when that was happening and how it was happening, it doesn't matter to anybody else how it was happening. It really just mattered to me. It was devastating in the moment, because it happened overnight, really, in my opinion. It happened so quickly, and I didn't see it coming. I probably should have seen it coming. When those big things happen, it's usually little things over a period of time that add up to that. And I can see that now, connecting the dots. But I use that as an example because if I wasn't in this environment and around Bob and around others that have really had a profound impact on my life, that would have been probably a very challenging thing to get through. I think anybody that goes through a divorce, or especially if you have kids, and there's a lot of emotions that go through that. You can really get into your stuff, and you can have a lot of self-doubt, and it can be crippling, and you can lose your way. You can lose your power. And what was interesting was Bob, at the same exact age, went through the same exact thing, and he had 3 kids too. And I'm not comparing myself to Bob, nor should anybody, but he had gone through the same thing. So I had access to somebody to say, how did you handle this? And one of the biggest pieces of advice he gave me was, I need to step into my power. He said, don't lose your power through this whole process. Hold the image of the other person at their highest self. Hold the image of your kids at their highest self, and most importantly, hold the image of you at your highest self. And he said, then go do the work. He said, you have to go do the work. Get lost in your work. This is the time where you really need to dive into your work and not lose sight of that, because what we teach is so important. And the more you teach it, the more you're going to internalize it, and the more you're going to understand there's a gift within all this. He said, I don't know what the gift is for you. He goes, but you'll know what the gift is for you. And as I did that, it just sped up the process of the healing, because you're going to hurt. We go through losses in life where we lose people or go through divorces or whatever. And there is hurt, a part of that process. But I think when you're in the right environment and around the right people, it just speeds up the process. And he truly helped me. And having gone through the exact same thing, it was very interesting to go through that as well. But to have somebody from a higher level of understanding kind of giving me a bird's eye view of how to handle that, and handle it in the right way, and handle it with class, that changed everything for me. And that adversity, I wouldn't be here today. I'd probably be doing something else if hadn't gone through that adversity. And I'm sure you two have many adversities you've gone through that you look back and go, thank God that happened. It was the worst thing ever in the moment, but now looking back, that changed my life. Like, that changed the trajectory of where I was going. And it was just like the universe or God saying, hey, I'm gonna shake things up a little bit, so you can go to the next level of the greater version of who you need to be if you choose into that. So
that is so true. Like about 8 years ago, I lost my first husband. Like, he passed away. And at the time, nowadays I don't look and say thank God, but I definitely see like how those difficult times can shape us and give us a lesson, or like have a huge impact, good or bad, and transform our lives to, shape or like give us direction to a higher purpose of something. So that's really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. What is your advice that you would have for like single dads who may be struggling and maybe they don't have that, that support, the mentors to help them go through that, and to find that balance between like their kids and work and trying to heal? Do you have any advice for single dads? Because we always hear about single moms, but single dads, I think that
and if you don't mind, how old are your kids? How old your kids too right now, and how old are kids when the divorce happened?
Sure. So my kids now are, there's a gap. There's one that's in high school. He's 17, thinks he knows it all. And then there's my 8 and 6-year-old who are like wild childs who would just, they're all over the place. But at the time, my little guys were 1 and 3 and my oldest was 12. So that was, well, what's funny too, though, is kids, and I'll get back to your first question, but kids are resilient. They handled it way better than I did, initially. They just move on. They move on with their lives. They just, like, it is what it is. And, they forget what happened an hour prior. So they're great teachers, and I always tell that to people when someone says, how do you teach this to your kids? I say, I don't, I live it. Like I really truly embody what we teach. And I think it's best to do it that way because they'll learn through you versus you telling them what to do. Like the kids, as they get older, especially if you have teenagers, they sure as heck don't listen to you, but they're watching, whether you believe it or not, they're watching. So as far as the advice I could give single dads, there's a lot of advice. I mean, you do want to get, the best thing you could ever do is get around the right people, because if you get around the wrong people during the wrong time, it could really take you down a dark hole. And I was around the right people. That certainly helped me. And, some of the best pieces of advice I ever received was, first one was take the high road. Like no matter what is happening, because emotions can be high, you can be dealing with, narcissistic people that want to control you and control the narrative and how people perceive you, so things are going to be said about you that might not necessarily be true. But if you take the high road, in time, things will work out. That's the second thing. Time always tells a story. So time in the beginning is our worst. It's not a good thing, because you want to speed up the process. But in time, it's our greatest ally. Because over a period of 3, 4, 5 years, for me, it's been 5 years. Time has told the story. Like you can't lie about that. You can pretend and you can fake it on social media for so long, but eventually time does, the results speaks a story, and results are often harsh, but they're always fair. So if you can, embed it in your mind, time will always tell the story. And if you keep taking the high road and doing the right thing and holding the image of the other person, if you're a single mother, hold the image of, the father, being his best version, and vice versa, with the man seeing the woman as their best version. That is easier said than done. It's not something I say you can do, overnight, but it is essential to, creating a prosperous and harmonious environment. And, for me, as I did that and I understood time told a story, I understood I could take the high road, and you take the high road to a certain point. You have to draw boundaries if your kids are being put in harm's way or something, but you do those things over time, and you have gratitude for, seeing your kids. You have gratitude when you're with them and you're in the present moment with them. You're not holding resentments, like it's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Bob used to always say that, you don't do that. You just hold the vision for them. You hold the vision for you. You take the high road, and you understand time will always tell the story. And if you show up every day and with integrity and show up for your kids, I think beautiful things will happen for you. And for me, it just ended up working out where I had my kids full time. I never landed in a court. I never landed, I never forced anything. Like it truly happened organically. And it was just for the best for everybody. And here we are now. And I still continue to take the high road, hold the image of, the everybody around me at their highest self. And I think if a single dad is going through it, I know it's going to be hard for you to do at the beginning, but it'll become a habit if you continue to do it. And you just send love to everybody that is bothering you, everybody that's hurt you, because the more good you put out, even if it's in your mind, it's all energy, the more good is going to come back to you.
That's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So
thank you so much. You coach your son too, right?
Yeah, I coach them all in sports. That was one of my goals at the beginning. I remember Bob asking me, he said, what do you want to do? And I was a kid, and I just was like, I want to get rich, like, which is not a goal. At the time, I know that now, but, eventually I said, I want to create a life of freedom and I want to help other people. And I know that was kind of vague, but it wasn't to him. He knew that was what he did. He said, I certainly can help you with that. And within that freedom, I wanted to be able to pick up my kids every day from school. I wanted to drop them off every day from school. I wanted to become so highly effective in what I was doing that I didn't have to work a lot, but I was creating a lot of significance and impact within the time I worked, if that makes sense. And so it would create a lot of freedom so I could do those things. And especially with my oldest, I've coached every game he's ever played in. He's in high school now. And I've traveled with him, I've been at every practice, I never missed any of that stuff. And, as it's coming to an end now for him in high school and in his career in sports, I can look back and go, man, I did it. I really manifested and created what my heart's desire years ago, before my son was even born, 17 years ago. And that was so near and dear to my heart. It was very important to have freedom to do that. It wasn't about the money, even though money ends up being a byproduct of who you grow into the more and more you develop and grow, that's all energy too. And we can talk about that, but that was something truly important to me. And then my two little guys came along the way, and now I'm doing it all over again with them.
Oh, that's so amazing. You're doing an amazing job with them. And
you have a beautiful kids. Yeah.
Yes. Since you talked about the money energy, like, because I think that's the number one issue, especially now with so much like people talking about recession, the dollar being replaced and things like that. What is your advice for people that are feeling stuck? They are in so much debt and they're trying to get out of debt. They're living paycheck to paycheck and they're like just so depressed. They feel like they are stuck. What would you say is like how they can manifest more money?
Sure. Well, I mean, what you focus on is going to grow, and it is, I'll read some to you. I have this in front of my desk and it's just a reminder. I pretty much have it memorized, but Bob had me, I felt like that years ago. I was living before maybe right when my first son was born, I had to sell the house I was living in. And I remember coming to the closing of the house and I had to bring money to the closing. Like I was in debt, so I didn't make any money off the home that was sold. I lost money and I had to put up the money. And I remember leaving that home and it was so hard because my son was so young. He was like a baby and we had nothing. And I moved into this 1-bedroom apartment. And I gave him the 1 bedroom. So only room in this tiny little apartment was his. And I made sure it was just special. It had his crib in it and posters and everything he liked. And then I slept on the couch. And for the first year of his life, I was in a 1-bedroom apartment sleeping on a couch with my son taking over that 1 bedroom. So he felt special and didn't understand what was going on. I was going through it. I was in debt. I wasn't earning a lot of money. And this was around the time I met Bob. That's what changed everything for me. But in that process, he had me write out, there's the book, The Science of Getting Rich. And like I said earlier, it's the book that inspired The Secret, but there's a chapter in there and there's 4 paragraphs that changed my life. And he had me write these out. And if anybody knows me, I'm not a big, I don't like writing things out. I think it's an intellectual exercise. I'm more of the emotional connection piece, like to visualize it and feel it and see myself in the end, that's more my style. But Bob always wanted me to write out stuff because writing causes thinking. And so he had me write out these 4 paragraphs every day. And we started it for 90 days. Initially, he's like, you're going to send this to me every day for 90 days. So it's embedded in your subconscious. And then he said, let's keep going. And we ended up doing it for a year. And then doing it every single day for a year. And if it was anybody else, I probably would have given myself an out or an excuse and quit and not done it. But I don't want to let him down. And I think that's the beauty of having an accountability partner that you really like, trust, and respect. You want the goal for yourself, but you also don't want to let them down. And I'll read it to you. This is what I would tell people. I would tell them to buy this book, and I would tell them to write this out and read this every single day, because it's going to teach you to hold the truth regardless of what is going on outside of you. We are programmed to focus on, I say you should focus on the higher image, not the lower concern, but we're mostly focused on the lower concern. That's just what we're programmed as from a young child in our environment. Most of us are focused on the negative. We see our parents, we see it in news, we see it in, you're just talking about it, like the loss of the dollar, like, people are going in debt, depression, the Great Depression's coming, I don't listen to any of that stuff. I really, truly believe we can create our own economy. I know there are things outside of us. We live in a physical universe that can step in and throw us off. But I do believe that, we are energy, we are spirit, and everything happens by the same law. And as we understand that we're your spirit, I'm spirit, we don't, we have a soul, and our soul is ever seeking its awareness and oneness with spirit. And as we become more aware, it's all about awareness. That's reflected on our results. But that all starts with our thinking. If we don't change the thinking, we're not going to change the future results. So to make a long story longer, I will read this to you really quickly. But this is what I wrote out for a year. And it really helped me hold the truth of what I really wanted, no matter what was happening on the outside, distractions, people, circumstances. It just didn't matter to me anymore. All that matters is what I wanted right here, what I wanted, and focusing on that, thinking about that, and getting in the feeling of already having it. So what Waddle says here in Think and Grow Rich, he says, I have said that an individual gets rich. And when he talks about getting rich, that is in all areas of our life. It's not monetarily. I've said that an individual gets rich by doing things in a certain way. In order to do so, you must become able to think in a certain way. Your way of doing things is a direct result of the way you think about things. To do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step towards getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth, regardless of appearances. You have the natural and inherent power to think what you want to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearances is easy. To think truth regardless of appearances is laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work you have to perform. There is no labor with which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when the truth is contrary to appearances. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind, which observes it. This can only be prevented by holding the thought of truth. And the fact of the matter is we focus on our results far too much. It's good to know what our results are, but there they are. Like, you don't need to continue to focus on the results, especially if they're not what you want. You need to focus on what you want. You need to get emotionally involved with what you want. And the more and more you do that, the more and more you're going to take different action steps and create different results. And I know somebody on the outside looking in might say, well, that's easy for you to say, but I've been through it. I've gone through all kinds of ups and downs and challenges and adversities. We are not, none of us, you two, myself, anybody, we're not immune to challenges. Like, challenges are what make or break us. And for me, anytime I go through something like that, I said, this is an opportunity to make a better version of me. I didn't always think that way, but it all goes back to this. And it goes back to not focusing on your results, focusing on your truth. And the more and more you can do that, through repetition of thinking of the same thing over and over again, that is how you're going to go to the next level and get out of whatever situation that you may not want to be in right now.
Wow, so powerful.
I wanna read this book.
Yeah, I read it already. I love it.
Oh yeah.
And I think that what you just read really explains like the law of attraction, right? Because when the secret, I think when the movie The Secret came out, I think a lot of misconception that people got the message. That's why they say law of attraction doesn't work, because they think that they just got to think about it, but just think and that's it, and then just sit down and then things are going to come on their way. But what you just read, it really explained on a deeper level how choosing the thoughts and really getting emotionally involved with what you want to achieve really is what's going to make it manifest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. Bob used to always say that when The Secret first came out, that was when I was mentoring under him. So I had a chance to meet and have lunch and dinner with all those people that were in it, and a fun fact, the first Secret that actually came out had Abraham Hicks in it. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Yeah. It was so much better than the original that came out. And that's no disrespect to Lisa Nichols, who replaced her. She's great too. But the original with Abraham Hicks and Bob, I mean, they were the stars. It was power packed, and it just didn't end up working out. I think she wanted to be compensated for some of her stuff, which is fine. But anyways, yeah, when it came out, I remember Bob saying, when The Secret came out, everybody was writing books on the law of attraction, but no one really understood it, and so I've been studying this forever. And, the law of attraction is it's a secondary law to the law of vibration. And it's ultimately just the law of resonance. As we change our resonance, that we change our vibration. And when we change our vibration, that's when we begin to attract all the circumstances, people, and things we need into our lives. And, there's just too many people out there that think, well, I'm thinking positive. I have a strong PMA, a positive mental attitude. And I say, I don't care how positive you are, but if your expectation level, what you truly believe inside, is the opposite, you're going to still attract that. So you could be the most positive person in the world and you visualize and you see it, but if your predominating subconscious feelings are something else, that's why you're attracting something different. And that's everything Bob used to teach, is changing their subconscious programming, as he called the paradigm. When you change the paradigm, that's when things begin to really take off in your life. And, I'm grateful for The Secret. I'm sure Bob was very grateful for The Secret, because that really got him out there, but then people needed to understand there's a whole nother concept to it, as far as understanding the feeling of it and taking action. You can't just sit at home and, visualize it. You got to go out and do it. You got to implement it. And, the law of attraction is very, very, there's a lot of misconceptions around it, but once you begin to truly understand it, then you know how it works, because it's always working.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say is the fastest and most effective way to change a paradigm for people that are seeking to?
A lot of people don't know what's the paradigm.
Sure. Well, there's two ways to change it. One's through, an emotional impact, usually something negative, like I mentioned earlier, going through a divorce, that happened it just happened like that. And at the time, I felt like it happened like that. That really moved me. It got me going, okay, I need to move. I need to do this. I need to do that. I wasn't doing this. I needed to show up better. I wasn't showing up the way at my greatest version of myself. And so how dare I do that to her? How dare I do that to myself? So it was an emotional impact going, okay, let's go. It's time to move. Usually that doesn't happen though. Usually it happens through repetition, and our paradigm hates repetition. We're taught in school to read, memorize, and repeat, which is the opposite way really of how to learn and change a paradigm. So, when you get into a proper environment and you begin to study something over and over and over again, and understand that redundancy and repetition are actually beautiful things, especially if you're studying yourself and your behaviors. That was one of the things Bob used to always ask. He said, do your behaviors scream success? And at the time when I got into his environment, they sure as heck did not. I did not have good habits and behaviors. And that's really what was, causing me not to have great results. So, as you get into a proper environment and you get into the repetition of studying it over and over again, reading a book, not just once, and putting it back on the shelf. He used to say, is the book back on the shelf or is it inside of you? And I said, well, how do I know? And he said, you'll know by your results. And if my results haven't improved, I need to take that book back out and I need to study it, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, over and over again, just like the Science of Getting Rich, doing that for a year. Like, that seems absurd to most people. It seems absurd to me right now, thinking back on it. I can't believe I did that for a year, but the fact that I did that for a year changed how I view anything that comes in my life now. Now I can just hold the image of what I want, get emotionally involved with it, and get to work. When distractions come my way, I don't allow those things to distract me anymore. So those are the two ways you change it. One's through an emotional impact, usually negative, something really like a death, divorce, 9/11 for people who were involved in 9/11, that was a big impact for them, but ultimately it's usually elite level coaching, repetition over a period of time. That's how you change a paradigm. And, that's the only way I've known how to do it over the years. And it's the best way to do it.
That's amazing. And what would you say that, like, because we know that sometimes we have to embody what we want to become, right? But how about people that feel like they have the imposter syndrome? Like, what advice would you tell for people to not feel that way, that they are being fake, before they become what they want to become?
It's a great question. Well, I think that all goes back down to something else Bob taught too, which is self-image. Our self-image it's not a paradigm, it's part of our paradigm. And our self-image is, whether our self-image is high or low, it tends to be a generator of self-fulfilling prophecies. You got to ask yourself, does your self-talk ask enough of you? What are you telling yourself all day long? And that's very, very important. Imposter syndrome is pretty normal. I think we've all felt that way. That probably pops in my mind from time to time. Who am I to, take the reins and do what Bob did? Well, who am I not to? I've been doing this a long time. Like, in another 5 or 10 years, I know I can be there, like maybe even sooner, but I think the people who become really great, and let's just say one thing, like what you guys are doing here or what I do for a living, People who become great, they manufacture their self-image, and they understand that they're inferior in certain areas, and they understand they're superior in other areas. And I don't focus on being inferior in other, like, I don't like fixing things around my house. I'll do it if I need it. I'll do what must be done if I need to. But if something gets broken, I'm going to call an expert that's a plumber. I'm going to call an expert that's a mechanic on my car. Like, I'm inferior to them in what they do because they're experts. Now, they're inferior to me when it comes to mindset, more than likely. I feel like I'm in the top 1% of people in our space when it comes to teaching mindset and the psychology of the mind and the subconscious and how this all works and how to implement it. So I think if someone has imposter syndrome, you've got to work on your image, and if you acknowledge that you do have that, I want you, when you get off this podcast, to write down what your current self-image is, your limiting beliefs, like that's how you perceive yourself. And then I want you to write out on the opposite end all the characteristics of the person you want to truly be. How do you want to think? How do you want to take action? What is how do you discipline your thinking? What is your attitude like? What is what is your unwavering faith in all things that you do? And as you do that, you write out this grocery list of all these attributes of the image you want to create. And then you can put it into like a statement saying, I'm so happy and grateful now that I have the best attitude. I'm disciplined in my thinking and my actions. I'm super successful in all things I do. I create a massive impact in the marketplace. People love what I have to say. And you repeat that to yourself over and over again. Yes, you're telling yourself a lie at the beginning, but eventually your subconscious will start to believe that, and it accepts these ideas over and over. It cannot reject them. So that's the biggest advice I could give you, is know that we all have a self-image, and know that we all are inferior in some ways in many things, especially when we're first starting something. Of course, you're going to be inferior to it. But I bet you somewhere at some point in your life, you are superior in something, and you've been superior in something. So you have the experience of being superior, and not superior in a bad way, like you're better than everybody else. No one's better than anybody. But you must have an experience in your life where you were superior and you felt incredible. And I want you to focus on that feeling, and then write out the grocery list of all the attributes of your new strong self-image, and start living into those. You need to think and act as that person until you become that person. That's what I tell everybody when they set a goal. A lot of people set an income goal, which is great, because you have to focus not on the income. You focus on, who do I need to become in order to achieve this income? What kind of habits do I need to take on subconsciously in order to achieve $1 million or more a year, or whatever? That's like the sweet spot for everybody. So that's the biggest advice I could give you. Know you have an image. Know the image. You cannot outperform your image, but you can change it. And you can change it by writing it out and by living into that every single day. And if your question is, how do I find those attributes? Well, go look at people that you respect. Go look at people on social media, on YouTube, whatever, and see how they speak, see how they interact, see how they dress. Go dress better. That's the biggest advice Bob gave me as a young man. I said, how do I increase my image? Because we're either upping our image or chipping away at our image every moment throughout the day. You got to think about that, right? Like, all day long, you two have opportunities to feed your image and up it and make it better, or you don't, with your thoughts, with your actions, with your interactions with other people. But for him, he used to tell me, just dress better, go get a nice suit. For him, it was suits. And for me, it's suits too. It's custom suits. I don't like to wear ties. I feel like I'm going to a job if I'm wearing a tie. So that's just my image, but you got to create the grocery list, and you got to live into it and think and act as that person. And you'll create a strong self-image. You'll manufacture that new image. And then there'll be a new image after you get to that. There's always a new one. There's always a new goal, and there's always a new image to create.
Beautiful, so powerful, such a powerful message.
Yeah,
and you said a little bit about goals. What would be like, is there any recommendation as far as goals for people when they're setting goals? Is there anything that's such as placing delusional goals, like, oh, this goal is like, you shouldn't place that, have this goal for yourself? What is the sweet spot to define, like, having goals for yourself? Like, yeah.
No, it's a good question. There's 3 types of goals. There's type A goals, type B goals, and type C goals. A type A goal is a goal you've already achieved. So it's not much of a goal, because it's not going to stretch you into the new image like we talked about. And then there's a type B goal. That's a goal you may have not achieved yet, but you probably know how to do it. So it's still not much of a goal. It's better than the type A goal that you've already achieved. But it's more like, let's say you're driving a Ford Explorer for your car. and your next goal is to get a new Ford Explorer. That's not really much of a goal. You already know how to do that. And so, the next one is a type C goal. And these are the goals that we don't know how to do it. So first and foremost, you shouldn't know how to do it because it's going to stretch you into the person you must become. And that's the most important part. It's not the goal, it's to grow, right? It's never the goal. It's nice to have material things because we live in a physical universe, so we correspond with physical things. However, it's the growth process is the most important. So the type C goals, what you want to focus on. You don't know how to do it. It scares you. It better scare you a little bit. It also excites you. It's both. It shouldn't just scare you. It should scare you. It should excite you, and you should not know how to do it. Like it shouldn't be, if you're earning 20,000 a year, don't come to me and say, well, I want to be a billionaire tomorrow. That is probably unlikely. Anything's possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying your subconscious is not in harmonious vibration with that yet. So maybe you set that as a goal, but you have other goals that lead up to it. Like, let's get you to 10,000 a month. How would you feel at 10,000 a month? If you're making 20,000 a year and you get to 10,000 a month, you probably feel like a king, and you're not even thinking about money anymore. And when you don't think about money, you've closed the door really to lack and limitation, and you've opened the door to prosperity and opulence and abundance. And that's all you're thinking about. And you actually would be shocked how much more money starts to come in because you're coming from such a creative place and not a place of lack. Mm-hmm. So you focus on the type C goals. Don't focus on goals that something you've already done before or something you know how to do. Focus on something you don't know how to do it, but it also excites you and it scares you, and it's going to stretch you, and then put yourself on the hook. Like, I don't believe in not telling people my goals. I don't believe in that. I don't think, a lot of people say you should keep it in your inner circle and you want to be protective. I'll tell the world. I'll tell the world all my goals. I want to be on the hook by everybody. And because it's going to be planted into their subconscious. That's universal subconscious. So everybody's thinking about it, and they're thinking about my goal, and they're putting out that energy for me too. And all that energy is going to come back, and it's only going to help me, speed up the process and get to where I ultimately want to get to. So that's how we set goals here. And that's how I've always set a goal. It's something to stretch me that I don't know how to do it, but it scares me and it excites me.
And I think it also makes you accountable, right? When you share it, because sometimes I was that way too, like, oh, let's not share with everyone because the energy of people might affect. But in a way, looking through that perspective, it can really make you accountable when you tell people that you're going to do something, because then you're more committed to showing the results, right? Than if you're just telling yourself, oh, I'm going to make 10 grand a month, right? So
sure. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times we lie to ourselves. We say, I'm going to do this. And that also chips away at your image. When you say you're going to do something, then you don't keep a promise to yourself. Like, I always keep promises to myself, and I always put myself on the hook, especially with like my kids. I'm always saying like, I'm going to do this. This is my goal. So they actually hold me accountable. If I veer away from that, especially my 8-year-old Declan, he's so smart and sweet and intuitive. He'll be like, Daddy, like you said, you're going to do this. And I'm like, you're right. I'm on it. Like, he's a great accountability partner. Oh, I love it. It's great. So, I agree with everything you said. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. What do you, going back to your kids a little bit, how do you set them to success? Like, do you do anything to shape their mind? Because we know the first 7 years of kids are the most important because of the brain waves, the way their brains are. They're like a sponge. Do you personally do anything for your kids so they can, be set for success mentally, spiritually, and all aspects?
Especially 17 years old, because of teenagers.
Teenagers are a little harder, but
it's a critical age. Yeah. Because I have a 17 years old too.
Yeah, I have a unique experience with it because I do have an older one, and I've been studying this before he was born. So I was implementing it with him. And my 17-year-old was like my ride or die. I mean, my 6 and 8-year-old don't know it as much because we've had a lot more success since they've been born, But my 17-year-old was there when, I can talk to him about it and be like, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, Dylan, his name's Dylan. So we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. You had the 1 bedroom. I was on a couch and I was doing calls from the patio and doing this and that, and really doing my best to live my truth, which was not having a job, not working for somebody else, but betting on myself and living my truth the whole time. And so he's near and dear to my heart. He's a lot like I am, which is a mirror of me, which drives me crazy sometimes. but I do have a unique experience because I did implement it with him at a young age, maybe unconsciously. And I see him now, he's so confident, like as a teenager, maybe too confident, a little cocky at that age, but I think as he studies this material and himself, and he just life experience will kind of humble him out. But I know it did me from my mid to late 20s. I really, like I said to you guys earlier, instead of just being an arrogant young kid, I became more of a man of value, which is so much more important than anything. But I do some stuff in the house. It's more me living it, and they see me not react, they see me respond, they see me stay calm. They know being relaxed is the best version of ourselves, and not losing our cool in the moment, which is 6 and 8 year old, they're going to lose their cool from time to time. I make sure they play sports. For me, other people may disagree. This just works for us. It's our winning formula. For me, competitive sports has been a huge, it's played a huge role, because in competitive sports, they got to learn to deal with other personalities. They got to deal with people they don't like. They got to deal with people that don't like them. They got to deal with playing as a team, playing as an individual. And some of my favorite things in sports is, you have a crowd watching you, and you're going to screw up. You're going to fail. And I want them to have a great relationship with failure. So when they fail, they have no other choice to get back up and keep going. We're not at home. You can't just quit and go to your bedroom. You're playing a basketball game, and you can't just walk over to the bench. You got to keep playing. So I want them to have a great relationship with failure. And I think they learn that a lot through sports, and, the adversities that sports give us, and also them winning when they eventually do win, because we're going to fail more than we succeed in life. In my opinion, I've failed so much more than I've succeeded. And then at home, we have certain words we don't say. We don't say can't, but, or try. Anytime someone says can't, we say that means won't, and won't means push-ups. That includes me. So if I say that and they catch me, I'm doing push-ups on the ground. And, we have little sayings like, what do we do when we're scared and we really want to do something? The answer is we do it anyway. So I want them to know being scared is okay. Like fear is a good thing. It's feedback. It's usually resistance that we need to attack. And I think they're growing up understanding what failure is and how that's okay. I ask them every day after school, what did you fail at today? I didn't say like, how was your day? Like every other parent, I think kids don't care. They don't want to answer that. But if you ask them something unique, like what made you happy today? What did you fail at today? What did you do today that made you a better person? More interesting questions to bring out things in them. Those are the things that I'm constantly asking them. Those are the words we don't say in our house. And those are the things we live by, especially with athletic sports, pushing them to be a better version of themselves.
That's amazing how you go through this perspective and this other side of fear, because everyone thinks of failure and fear as a bad thing, but you are working on a good thing. And that's very unusual, like to hear.
Yeah. I say that quote that Hill says in Think and Grow Rich all the time to him about fear and faith. He says, any idea that's held in the mind that's emphasized, that's either feared or revered, so positive or negative, will begin at once to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate form available. And I'm always saying that to them. We have the opportunity to choose fear or faith, and they both are obviously something we can't see. So why would you ever choose fear? I'd never give in to the fear. The only way we give in to fear is if we quit. So I said, just have faith in your heart that when you do this, it's going to feel amazing. And the more experiences they have of pushing through fear and, having faith, then, that's going to mold them into the young men that they're becoming.
So beautiful. Yeah. We could stay here the whole day talking. How can people learn more, like if they want to, because you guys offer mentorships, right? How can people get more involved if they're looking for that type of support and community and, relationships? Can you tell us a little bit more about the programs that you guys have?
Yeah, we have several mentorship programs where we coach people. And then we also have a coaching business platform where we coach people on their mindset, but we also coach them on building a successful coaching business. And we've been doing that for quite some time. I think we're the foremost expert in the field, in my opinion. We've been doing this for so long. And we have coaches that are earning 6, 7, even 8 figures with it, having gone through our trainings and gone through our platforms. But the mentorship, that's where I started. I finally spent time and money on myself years ago. I knew I was going to spend the time. I knew I was going to spend the money. I just felt like what an opportunity to get into an environment and get access and proximity to people who can teach me this. They really understood this on such an in-depth level, and I could ask them questions, and I could begin to understand what I didn't understand and expand my conscious awareness. And we have some of the best mentorship programs on earth. Bob in my opinion, I'm biased, but I think he was the best who's ever done it. There's been a lot of greats out there, but as far as the lineage from Carnegie to Hill to Earl Nightingale, who was really the founder of personal development, who was his mentor, to Bob, and now to all of us, we have some incredible mentorship platforms that really teach you how to think. That's what I teach my kids. I don't teach them what to think. I teach them how to think. And I draw out what's already within them. We already have everything we need inside of us. We just have to have an environment that will allow us to blossom like a flower. And we have some of the best mentorship platforms out there that give you the direction that most people are yearning for, that they just don't have. And you never want to get caught up in watching the videos and reading the books and gathering the information. That is a very small piece of it, because that goes into your conscious mind, which is the gatekeeper to the subconscious. But you need to, immerse yourself into an environment where your desired paradigm is the normal paradigm. And as you do that, the conversations, the energy, all that is just different. You two know that, better than anybody. You get the energy of people who are creating success, whether it's monetarily or whatever it is you want in life. Their energy is different. And when you get around that, some of it's bound to rub off and take you to the next level.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're gonna put here the website so you guys can also access that. And then we're gonna ask you one last question to finish our podcast today. If you could leave only one message to the world, what would that be?
Well, what a great question. Go all in. We only get one life that we know as best as we know it. There could be reincarnation, there could be this, there could be, I don't know. I know Bob is working to and through me, so I know there's something else out there for me, but I'm here right now. And I would say the best message I could give somebody is go all in your life. Where in your life are you half-assing it? Where are you drifting? Where are you complacent? Where are you comfortable? Never get comfortable. The comfort zone is a dangerous place because that almost feels good. And I've been there, but it puts you back so far from where you could ultimately go. And that is a motto. I always have a motto every 30, 60, 90 days. I'm doing these sprints, and they're for my habits. They're for my behaviors. They're for just my overall thinking to embed into my conscious awareness. And right now it's all in. Are you all in? And all in can mean so many things. For me right now, all in means I'm present with the two of you. I'm not thinking about, the next call I need to get on with a client or picking up my kids in a few hours, those things are going to come anyway, so I might as well be present in the moment, because this is all we have. And if I'm present in the moment and I'm all in with you, I can give you everything. I'm on purpose with both of you right now, and I'm on purpose with myself, which means I'm giving everything I have. And hopefully it helps enrich somebody else's life that's watching this. And so that's the best advice I could give you is, are you all in? And if you're not, choose in, because life goes by very, very fast. And if you don't wake up, it's going to be gone like that. And you want to look back and go, man, I was all in. I didn't tiptoe my way safely to death. I really I lived it. I was in the present moment. I was all in it. Everything I did, whether it was sitting with my kid on the couch watching Netflix, or whether it was on a podcast for an hour today on April 28th, 2023, whatever you do, go all in and see where it takes you. See how far you can take it in this life.
Love it. So powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. We see so much value in everything that you shared with us today. And I'm sure it's definitely going to change a lot of people's lives. Our listeners that are listening to this. So we're very, very grateful for your time and your wisdom. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.